Spencer Tracy almost said no to the role that would expose his greatest rival. After decades of avoiding each other in Hollywood, Tracy and Fredric March finally collided in Inherit the Wind. One studied for weeks, the other refused to rehearse. One gained weight and wore a wig, the other just showed up. Today, we're diving into the untold story of how these two legends nearly tore a movie apart. Spencer Tracy was born on April 5, 1900, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He loved movies from a young age. He would watch the same film over and over, then act out the scenes for his friends. He even joked that he only went back to school so he could learn to read subtitles in foreign films. It was clear early on that movies were going to be a big part of his life. In 1917, when Spencer was 17, World War I was happening. He and his best friend, Pat O'Brien, decided to join the Navy. They weren't really thinking about serving their country. They just wanted some excitement. But their Navy experience turned out to be pretty boring. They stayed at a training camp in Illinois and never saw any action. Spencer worked hard, rising to the rank of Seaman Second Class. But when the war ended in 1918, he left the Navy. In 1921, Spencer's dad pushed him to go to college and become a doctor. Spencer agreed and enrolled at Ripon College in Wisconsin. But everything changed when he acted in a school play called The Truth. The moment he stepped on stage, he knew he wanted to be an actor. Around this time, Spencer was also on the school debate team. During a debate trip, he auditioned for the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, AADA, in New York City. The judges loved him and gave him a scholarship. Just like that, his dream of being a doctor was replaced with a new goal: acting. In 1922, Spencer moved to New York to attend AADA. Life was tough. He shared a tiny apartment with Pat O'Brien, and they barely had money for food. They even shared one nice suit for auditions. But Spencer worked hard and impressed everyone with his natural talent. He quickly moved up in the program and got his first taste of professional acting in small plays. His big moment came in 1930 with the play The Last Mile. He played a prisoner on death row, and his performance was so powerful that it blew audiences away. The play ran for almost 300 performances, making it a huge hit. After impressing audiences on Broadway with his role in The Last Mile, he caught the eye of famed director John Ford. Tracy didn't think he had what it took to make it in films, but Ford disagreed. He cast Tracy in a movie called Up the River, which also featured a young Humphrey Bogart just starting his career. The film, a comedy set in prison, was shot in just 17 days. Tracy played St. Louis, a clever and confident convict who escapes prison to help a friend, only to return for a baseball game. After Up the River became a hit, Fox Studios offered Tracy a 5-year contract. Between 1930 and 1935, he made an incredible 25 movies. But most of these films didn't do well at the box office, and the studio rarely gave him high-quality roles. Everything changed in 1935 when Tracy signed with MGM, the biggest and most glamorous studio in Hollywood. MGM's young producer, Irving Thalberg, believed Tracy had the talent to be a star, even though the studio's boss, Louis B. Mayer, wasn't convinced. Thalberg saw something special in Tracy, his ability to play everyday men with honesty and charm. Tracy's first movie at MGM was The Murder Man, a crime drama where he played a reporter. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it introduced him to MGM audiences. Soon after, Tracy began landing roles that showed off his talent and set him on the path to becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. In 1936, he got his big break with the movie San Francisco. He played a kind-hearted priest, Father Tim Mullen, in a role that lasted only 17 minutes on screen. But those 17 minutes were enough to grab everyone's attention. Audiences loved how real and emotional his performance felt. The movie itself was a hit, earning more money than any other film that year, and it even got Tracy his first Oscar nomination. Although he didn't win, this moment changed his life. MGM's boss, Louis B. Mayer, saw Tracy's potential and signed him to a long-term contract. From then on, the doors to bigger and better roles started opening. Tracy made history just 2 years later, becoming the first actor to win 2 Oscars in a row. His first win came from the 1937 movie Captains Courageous. In this story, he played Manuel Fidello, a kind and hardworking fisherman who helps a spoiled boy stranded at sea. To play the role, Tracy learned everything about Portuguese fishermen, how they talked, how they worked, and even how they walked in heavy boots. He poured himself into the character, and his performance left audiences amazed. But not everything was perfect. Tracy later admitted he felt uncomfortable playing the role because it didn't reflect who he was, saying, "I wasn't 1,000 miles near that character." Still, the movie became a hit, and Tracy's heartfelt acting stood out. The very next year, in 1938, Tracy won his second Oscar for Boys Town. This movie told the story of Father Edward J. Flanagan, a real-life priest who built a community for homeless boys. Tracy spent time with Father Flanagan to get the character just right. The movie wasn't just a success at the box office, it also brought a lot of attention to the real Boys Town, helping it grow and raise more money. Tracy was so moved by the experience that he gave his Oscar to Father Flanagan, saying it belonged to him. This role became one of Tracy's most loved performances and showed just how much heart he brought to his work. Spencer Tracy's life was full of struggles and complexities, starting with his marriage to Louise Treadwell in 1923. They tied the knot quickly during a break between performances at a church in Illinois. At first, it seemed exciting, but the marriage soon faced problems. Spencer's drinking started to show early on, and it only got worse as time passed. Louise, however, stayed by his side, often putting her own dreams of acting aside to support him. Things got even harder in 1925 when their son, John, was born. At just 10 months old, they found out he was deaf. This news shocked them both. Louise devoted herself completely to helping John, learning how to care for him and even teaching him to communicate. But Spencer couldn't handle the guilt. He blamed himself for John's condition, believing it was punishment for his own sins. This guilt pushed him further into drinking, which created even more distance between him and his family. Even though their relationship became strained, Louise stayed strong. She used her position as Spencer's wife to advocate for deaf children, and in 1942, she founded the John Tracy Clinic. This clinic became a major step forward for families with deaf children. Interestingly, it was Spencer's success in Hollywood, despite his personal issues, that made it possible to fund this effort. Spencer's battle with alcoholism was one of the hardest parts of his life. His drinking would spiral into long binges where he'd lock himself in a hotel room, drinking for days. People who knew him shared shocking stories. Once, he even woke up in a padded cell after a binge. Another time, he was banned from a brothel for behaving violently. His drinking hurt his work, too. On movie sets, he could be cruel to others when he was drunk, causing delays and tension. In 1942, Spencer met Katharine Hepburn, and their relationship changed his life. Katharine did everything she could to help him stay sober. She'd sleep outside his hotel room during his drinking binges, hoping to stop him from doing something worse. While she helped him control his drinking for short periods, Spencer's addiction never fully went away, and it eventually affected his health in his later years. Through all this, Spencer's guilt over his son's deafness never left him. He found it hard to bond with John, even though he loved him deeply. His work ethic in Hollywood partly came from wanting to provide the best care for his son. Spencer Tracy's marriage to Louise Treadwell fell apart in 1933 after 10 years. They didn't get divorced, though. Tracy's Catholic faith wouldn't allow it, even when he started seeing other women. This created a strange arrangement. He and Louise lived separate lives, but they stayed married. Louise kept the title of Mrs. Spencer Tracy and focused on her work with the John Tracy Clinic, while Tracy pursued new relationships. After the separation, Tracy began an affair with actress Loretta Young. They became close while filming Man's Castle, and even went to church together, sharing a deep connection over their Catholic faith. But the most important relationship of his life started in 1942 when he met Katharine Hepburn on the set of Woman of the Year. They stayed together for 25 years, but Tracy still wouldn't leave Louise. Hepburn accepted this, never speaking publicly about their relationship while Tracy was alive. She once said, "I loved him and wanted to be with him. If I had to live that way, I was going to do it." This complicated arrangement was hard on everyone. Louise used her position as Tracy's wife to continue her charity work and keep a sense of family for their children. Hepburn, meanwhile, gave up any hope of having a normal relationship with Tracy, but stayed because of her love for him. Tracy, caught between the two women, carried the weight of his decisions quietly. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn were one of Hollywood's most iconic pairs. Over 25 years, they made 9 films together, creating magic on screen and becoming a legendary duo. Their movies didn't just entertain. They told stories about love, equality, and even the big changes happening in society during their time. Their first film, Woman of the Year in 1942, introduced their incredible chemistry to the world. Audiences fell in love with how natural they were together. Over the years, they made films like Keeper of the Flame, Without Love, State of the Union, and Adam's Rib. Each movie showed a new side of their partnership, both as actors and as friends. One of their best films was Adam's Rib in 1949. In this movie, they played a married couple who were also lawyers, but they found themselves on opposite sides of a big court case. The story was about gender roles and relationships, and it was both funny and smart. Tracy and Hepburn made sure the script felt real, and you could feel how well they understood each other through their performances. People still call this one of their greatest movies. Their last film together, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, was very emotional. Tracy was very sick at the time, and they both knew this would be their final project together. The movie was about an interracial marriage, a bold topic for that time. Tracy's last scene, where he talks about true love, was filmed in one take. Hepburn was watching off camera and couldn't stop crying. Just 17 days after finishing his scenes, Tracy passed away, never getting to see the movie. It became one of their most memorable works. Over the years, their films together made a huge impact. They weren't just loved by audiences, they were also big hits. Their movies made over $91 million back then, which would be close to $950 million today. Critics loved their work too, with 9 Oscar nominations across their films. Tracy and Hepburn weren't just great actors, they were a perfect team, both on and off the screen. Spencer Tracy's career hit another peak with the release of Father of the Bride in 1950. In this charming comedy, Tracy played Stanley Banks, a father who is thrown into chaos when his daughter announces she's getting married. Elizabeth Taylor, playing the bride, added sparkle to the story, but it was Tracy's portrayal of a loving yet overwhelmed dad that won everyone's hearts. The film was a huge hit, earning over $6 million on a budget of just $1.5 million, making it MGM's top film that year. Audiences loved how real Tracy made the character feel. In one scene, Stanley nervously suggests his daughter should elope to save money, but immediately denies it when his wife finds out. Moments like this showed off Tracy's knack for blending humor and warmth. His performance even earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor, his fifth nod overall. The film was so popular that it led to a sequel, Father's Little Dividend, and even inspired a TV series and a remake in 1991 starring Steve Martin. Tracy's role remains one of his most relatable, proving why he was such a beloved star. 5 years later, Tracy wowed audiences again in Bad Day at Black Rock. This was a very different film, a tense drama where he played John McCready, a quiet, one-armed man who arrives in a small desert town hiding a dark secret. The film was shot under scorching heat in California, with temperatures reaching over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Tracy almost didn't take the role. He wanted to back out, but the studio head threatened to sue him if he quit. Despite the tough conditions, Tracy gave one of his most powerful performances. One of the most talked-about scenes is when Tracy's character takes on a much stronger man in a diner fight. Using just one arm and some clever judo moves, he defeats him with calm precision. The scene became iconic, showing Tracy's ability to make every moment unforgettable. The movie tackled big issues like racism and small-town corruption, making it bold for its time. It was so impactful that it was later added to the U.S. National Film Registry for being historically important. Tracy's work in Bad Day at Black Rock didn't just win over American audiences, it also earned him international praise. At the 1955 Cannes Film Festival, he won Best Actor, sharing the honor with a Soviet film cast in a rare tie. This award was a huge moment for Tracy, proving his talent wasn't just recognized in Hollywood, but around the world. His quiet, powerful performance left a lasting mark, showing why he was one of the most respected actors of his generation. The 1960 movie Inherit the Wind brought two Hollywood legends, Spencer Tracy and Fredric March, together for the first and only time. Both had been huge stars since the 1930s, winning Oscars and becoming icons of their era. For years, fans and insiders wondered what it would be like to see them act together. But it never happened, until this film. They played lawyers on opposite sides of a heated courtroom battle about teaching evolution, and their scenes were electric. But getting these two stars on board wasn't easy, especially for Spencer Tracy. He wasn't sure he wanted to do the film at first. Tracy was almost 60 and had been in the business for decades, so he was picky about the roles he took. The story's focus on evolution worried him because of his Catholic upbringing, and he was also struggling with health problems that made long film shoots difficult. But the film's director, Stanley Kramer, was determined to cast him. Kramer even asked Tracy's longtime partner, Katharine Hepburn, to help convince him. She told Tracy the story was important and would challenge him in a good way. After months of back and forth, Tracy finally agreed. Once Tracy was in, Kramer had to find the right actor to play the opposing lawyer. He chose Fredric March, another Hollywood heavyweight, because he thought March's bold, theatrical style would be the perfect match for Tracy's quieter performance. March hesitated at first, but when he heard Tracy had signed on, he quickly agreed. The idea of working with Tracy was too exciting to pass up. Fredric March and Spencer Tracy couldn't have been more different in how they acted, and their styles in Inherit the Wind show this clearly. Fredric March prepared like a scientist. He played Matthew Harrison Brady, a character based on William Jennings Bryan. To get it right, March spent weeks studying Bryan's speeches, his way of talking, and even his beliefs. He wanted to capture every detail. March gained 15 pounds and used makeup and a wig to look like Brian. He practiced Brian's dramatic way of speaking, rehearsing his gestures and voice until they were perfect. On set, March even wore heavy wool suits in the heat because he thought it would help him feel what his character felt. Everything he did was planned and practiced, right down to the smallest movement. Spencer Tracy, however, was completely different. He played Henry Drummond, based on lawyer Clarence Darrow, and his approach was simple and natural. Tracy didn't spend weeks researching Darrow. Instead, he focused on understanding the case and what his character believed. He thought that if he understood the character, the performance would come naturally. Tracy didn't rehearse much because he liked his acting to feel fresh and real. He used small movements and quiet expressions instead of big dramatic gestures. On set, Tracy made everything look so real that people forgot he was acting. He believed acting should be effortless, saying, "Plumbing is more important than acting." Gene Kelly, who played a reporter in the movie, noticed how different these two were. He said March was like a dancer, carefully rehearsing every move and line. Tracy, on the other hand, reminded him of a jazz musician, making it up as he went along and reacting to what was happening in the moment. Both were great in their own way, and Kelly admired how their differences created something special. March filled the screen with energy and big moments. Tracy drew you in with quiet strength. Together, their performances balanced each other perfectly. Critics loved how their styles clashed, just like the story of the film itself. Emotion versus reason, tradition versus progress. Some said March was brilliant, larger than life, and powerful as Brady. Others thought Tracy's calm, thoughtful approach as Drummond stole the show. Both were nominated for Oscars, though neither won. Still, their work left a lasting impression. Spencer Tracy worked with director Stanley Kramer on some of the most memorable films of his career. In 1961, he starred in Judgment at Nuremberg, a courtroom drama about the trial of German judges who helped the Nazis commit terrible crimes. Tracy played Chief Judge Dan Haywood, the man leading the tribunal. This role showed his incredible talent, as he brought depth and emotion to the character. He spent hours preparing, learning about the real Nuremberg trials to get everything just right. His hard work paid off, earning him an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. One of the most powerful moments in the film was his 13-minute closing speech, which left audiences stunned. It made people think deeply about guilt, responsibility, and morality. Making this movie was not easy for Tracy. He was 61 years old and already in poor health. He had diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart problems. The long filming days made his health worse, and he needed medical help between scenes. Still, Tracy never gave up and insisted on finishing the movie. His dedication and performance made the film unforgettable. 2 years later, in 1963, Tracy surprised everyone by doing a comedy called It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. The movie was completely different from the serious roles he was known for. Tracy played Captain T.G. Culpepper, a police detective trying to retire but caught in a wild treasure hunt. The movie had a huge cast of famous comedians, and Tracy held his own, showing he could handle comedy just as well as drama. The filming was tough, lasting 167 days, and Tracy, who was now 62, worked long hours despite his failing health. He even insisted on doing his own stunts, including one where he hung from a fire escape 15 stories above the ground. This risky move shocked everyone, especially since Tracy was already considered a health risk. The movie was expensive to make, but became a huge success. Audiences loved it, and it made $60 million at the box office, making it one of the biggest films of the year. Even with all the chaos during filming, Tracy's performance stood out, showing his incredible range as an actor. Spencer Tracy's health started getting worse in the early 1960s, and it marked the sad end of his incredible Hollywood career. By 1963, when he was 63 years old, he faced many serious health problems all at once. Years of heavy drinking had damaged his liver, and he struggled with type 2 diabetes, a condition he'd had since the late 1940s. His diabetes was hard to control and often left him feeling weak and confused. On top of this, he developed heart problems, which caused chest pain and made it hard for him to breathe. His blood pressure was dangerously high, especially during stressful moments. Because of all these issues, Tracy had to cut back on acting and turn down roles he would have loved to play. In July 1963, Tracy had a frightening health scare. While staying at Katharine Hepburn's beach house in California, he suddenly couldn't breathe. He was rushed to the hospital and diagnosed with pulmonary edema, a condition where fluid builds up in the lungs due to heart failure. The situation was so serious that many thought he wouldn't survive. Even Tracy believed it could be the end. But Hepburn stayed by his side, caring for him around the clock, and he pulled through. After this, she moved in with him to take care of him full-time. As the years went on, Tracy's health continued to decline. His breathing problems got worse, and he developed chronic bronchitis, which caused constant coughing and made it hard for him to speak his lines. Years of smoking and drinking had destroyed his lungs, leading to emphysema, a condition that made it harder and harder to breathe. On set, he often needed oxygen just to get through the day, and directors had to plan shooting schedules around his limited energy. In 1965, things took a serious turn. Tracy needed emergency surgery for a lung issue. The surgery was successful, but his recovery was slow and complicated. He even slipped into a coma because his kidneys started failing, likely due to his diabetes and overall poor health. Against all odds, he woke up from the coma, but it left him even weaker. Despite everything, Tracy refused to give up acting. He worked with doctors to regain some strength and used oxygen to save his energy for the moments he needed it most. His final performance came in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967. The film, about interracial marriage, starred Tracy alongside Hepburn and Sidney Poitier. Everyone knew it would be a tough shoot for Tracy because of his poor health. Insurance companies refused to cover him, but the director, Stanley Kramer, and Hepburn believed in him so much that they put their own salaries on the line to make sure he could do the film. Tracy could only work a few hours a day and needed constant breaks. Hepburn stayed by his side, helping him with everything from learning his lines to making sure he ate properly. The most emotional moment came when Tracy filmed his final scene, a 6-minute speech. Knowing Tracy didn't have much energy, the director set up multiple cameras to capture it all in one take. Tracy gave an incredible performance, pouring all his talent and emotion into the scene. When the cameras stopped, the entire crew applauded. They knew they had witnessed something special, Tracy's last great moment on screen. Just 17 days after finishing the film, Spencer Tracy passed away on June 10, 1967. Early that morning, he got up to make coffee but collapsed in the kitchen. Hepburn, who was upstairs, heard the crash and ran to find him. Tracy had suffered a massive heart attack and died almost instantly. His death shocked Hollywood, even though everyone knew how sick he had been. In keeping with Tracy's private nature, his funeral was a small, quiet event with only close friends and family attending. Hepburn didn't go, out of respect for Tracy's estranged wife, Louise, who he had never divorced. Tracy's final film, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, was released 6 months after his death. It was a huge success, earning him a posthumous Oscar nomination for Best Actor, his 9th. Over the years, Tracy's legacy only grew. In 1996, he was honored with a U.S. postage stamp as part of the Legends of Hollywood series. In 2017, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was added to the National Film Registry for its cultural significance. And in 2020, the American Film Institute reaffirmed Tracy's place as one of the greatest stars of all time.